Despite assurances to the Soviet leadership, and despite our repeated warnings over the past 20 years, the North Atlantic Alliance has been recklessly expanding to the east, creating direct military threats to Russia right on our borders. This aggressive course ultimately provoked the Ukrainian crisis. The trigger was the coup d'état in Kiev, organized in February 2014 by Washington and its European allies, which brought to power ultranationalists, who proclaimed a course for the extermination of everything Russian, and who began a war with millions of people of Russian culture who refused to recognize the criminal power of the putschists. This is precisely the root cause of the crisis, which Western leaders today prefer not to remember and memorize about returning Ukraine to the borders of 1991. They are only interested in the territory, not the fate of people whose ancestors lived for centuries in Crimea, Donbass and Novorossiya, and whom the leaders of the Kiev regime publicly called rude words, terrorists, and threatened to rot their children in basements. Zelensky, back in 2021, demanded that everyone who feels involved in Russian culture get out to Russia. Since 2014, Ukraine has consistently adopted laws banning the Russian language in education, in the media, in culture, and in all other areas. Recently, the parliament banned the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church. I would like to remind you in this regard that Article 1 of the UN Charter requires respect for human rights, as written there, regardless of race, gender, language, and religion. But the West turns a blind eye to this gross violation of the Charter by the Russophobic and racist regime in Kiev, continuing to promote Zelensky's dead-end formula, I would even say stupid formula, which calls for Russia's capitulation. A couple of weeks ago, this citizen unveiled an equally schizophrenic plan for victory. Of course, neither the formula, nor the plan, nor the fantasies about the membership of Kiev-controlled Ukraine in either NATO or the European Union bring peace to Europe closer. Stability in this part of the Eurasian continent will be achieved only if long-term reliable guarantees in the security sphere are ensured, for example, in the form in which they were set out in our initiatives of December 2021, which were rejected by the West. Alexander Grigorievich Lukashenko also eloquently reminded us of this today. NATO is no longer satisfied with the war that it unleashed against Russia at the hands of the illegal government in Kiev. The entire OSCE space is not enough for it. Now the United States and its satellites are trying to turn the whole of Eurasia into an arena of geopolitical confrontation. The alliance wrote in its documents that threats to it also come from the Asia-Pacific region, including the South China Sea, the Taiwan Strait. The alliance wrote in its documents that threats come, as I have already said, from various parts of the east of our continent, and intended to establish its military dominance not only in Europe, but also in the east of Eurasia. NATO is penetrating this region under the slogan of Indo-Pacific strategies, eroding the inclusive mechanisms that have been built around ASEAN for decades. In return, Washington is creating various kinds of threes and fours like AUKUS, Quad, blocks with the participation of the United States, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and other closed configurations with the obvious goal of containing China, isolating Russia, and putting brutal pressure on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The situation in the Middle Eastern part of Eurasia is developing even more dramatically. The unilateral withdrawal of the United States from the agreements on the Iranian nuclear program, which were approved by the UN Security Council, and Washington's persistent desire to monopolize the Arab-Israeli settlement process have had catastrophic consequences, putting this strategically important region on the brink of complete destabilization and a major war. The Biden administration is blocking any efforts aimed at ending the tragedy of the Palestinian people, while condemning terrorism in all its manifestations. We categorically reject the collective punishment of the residents of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. The West is trying to remain silent about this, but in 1 year of the Israeli operation, twice as many Palestinian civilians have died as the number of civilian casualties on both sides of the Ukrainian conflict in the 10 years since the coup d'etat in Kiev. Just think about these numbers. The West does not calm down its destructive activity in other parts of the Eurasian continent either. In the South Caucasus, the West is persistently pushing its services in the normalization of Armenian-Azerbaijani relations, having fled Afghanistan after 20 years of occupation. The United States and its allies today want to wedge themselves into the fragile process of stabilizing the situation in this country. They are inventing pretexts for resuming their military presence in the countries of Central Asia. As a result of the aggressive actions of the United States, NATO, and the European Union, the risks of fragmentation of our continent have increased. The Eurasian security architecture we are discussing is intended to become a constructive alternative to these negative trends, stabilize the military-political situation in the pan-continental space, ensure its unity and interconnectedness, and remove threats from the Western Euro-Atlantic direction. It is obvious to us that there can be no return to the previous models in which the United States played the main role with its claim to exclusivity. Moreover, wherever America tried to rule, things did not get better. It is necessary to take into account new geopolitical and international legal realities, to generate ideas based not on the law of the strong, but on equality and a fair balance of interests. Our vision of the Eurasian architecture is harmoniously combined with the global security initiative put forward by the chairman of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping. One of its key principles is the need to eliminate the root causes of conflicts, be it in the Middle East, the Balkans, Ukraine, or Southeast Asia. This is the key to creating a more just world order and genuine multilateralism. In the work of our conference, I believe it is important to take into account the accumulating experience of legally formalizing confidence-building measures of a political and military nature between states in various parts of the continent in accordance with their needs and existing national potential. They must come from life, from practice. In particular, together with our Belarusian friends, we have developed a draft concept of security of the Union State, and we are completing the preparation of a bilateral interstate treaty on security guarantees, which will be aimed at further strengthening obligations for reliable mutual protection from external threats. In the context of escalating tensions in the east of the continent, we are paying great attention to ensuring peace on the Korean Peninsula. As you know, in the development of friendly relations with North Korea, the Russian-Korean Treaty on Comprehensive Strategic Partnership was signed and entered into force, which is intended to play an important role in ensuring the security of our countries and stabilizing the situation in Northeast Asia. A serious factor in strengthening Russian-Iranian relations will be the Treaty on Comprehensive Strategic Partnership between Russia and Iran, which is being prepared. As I said, this treaty is being prepared for signing in the near future. It will enshrine the parties' desire for closer cooperation in the field of defense and for interaction in the interests of peace and security at the regional and global levels. Of paramount importance for strengthening stability in Eurasia are the relations of strategic interaction and comprehensive partnership between Russia and the People's Republic of China, which ensure the progressive growth of creative cooperation in all areas for the benefit of the peoples of the two countries. These relations contribute to the harmonization of integration processes on the continent and serve as the most important stabilizing factor on a global scale in the face of the destructive actions of the collective West in its attempts to maintain its hegemony. In addition to bilateral efforts to strengthen security, multilateral associations such as the SCO, ASEAN, CSTO, CIS, the Cooperation Council for the Arab States of the Persian Gulf, and the Conference on Interaction and Confidence-Building Measures in Asia play a special role in the Eurasian space. Each of these forums has a busy agenda on a wide variety of security dimensions. Growing awareness of the responsibility of the regional players themselves for settling disputes in their parts of Eurasia is evident in the activities of such structures as the 3+3 platform for the South Caucasus, the Moscow format of consultations on Afghanistan, and the mechanism of neighboring countries of this country, and the Astana format for Syria. I believe that the experience gained in all of these formats should be actively used to harmonize existing initiatives, including in the context of forming the architecture of Eurasian security. In June of this year, together with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Belarus, we signed a joint appeal to the executive heads of multilateral organizations in Eurasia with a proposal to join the initiative to develop a Eurasian Charter of Diversity and Multipolarity in the 21st century. Our Belarusian friends put forward this idea at the first Minsk conference a year ago. We actively supported them. We see the Eurasian Charter as a programmatic document that will set out the framework principles of the architecture of pan-continental security based on the norms of the UN Charter. I emphasize once again, not selectively, but in their entirety and interrelation. A separate session is planned at the current conference to discuss the substantive elements of the Charter. As I understand it, we hope that it will contribute to the coordination of recommendations on how to protect our common space from military and any other threats in the interests of billions of people. And do not forget that Alexander Grigorievich Lukashenko, speaking just now from this rostrum, invited all of us to the next conference in 2025. I wish you success.